I still remember the night Emma stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes cold, and delivered a sentence that sliced straight through my chest. She said, "Choose me or choose that pathetic friend of yours." The room went silent, but inside my head everything exploded at once. It wasn't just jealousy. It wasn't just insecurity. There was something darker in the way she said it, like she already decided who I should be, who I should love, and who I should cut out of my life. And all of it because of Ethan. A friend she barely knew. A friend she judged in the first 5 seconds just by how he looked. I didn't know it yet, but that ultimatum, that single moment, would unravel every lie, every mask, and every hidden truth in the days that followed. It was the spark that set my entire life on fire. Ethan showed up on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind where the sunlight spills across the living room and everything feels a little too peaceful to be real. I hadn't seen him in almost 4 years. When I opened the door, he gave me that same lopsided grin he always had, the one that made it impossible not to smile back. His clothes were simple, worn, the kind you'd expect from someone who'd been living out of a backpack while traveling between countries. His hair was a bit messy, his beard slightly overgrown, and he carried a canvas bag slung over his shoulder like he'd just stepped off a train. To me, he looked exactly like Ethan, unchanged, grounded, familiar in all the best ways. But Emma's expression shifted the moment she laid eyes on him. It was subtle at first, just a tightening of her jaw, a quick glance up and down as if she were scanning him for flaws. Then the smile she forced was so paper-thin, I could practically see it tearing at the edges. We all sat down in the living room, and the atmosphere instantly turned strange. Ethan, being Ethan, tried to break the tension with jokes. Emma didn't laugh. She didn't even pretend. Instead, she nodded politely, her eyes drifting across him with a kind of quiet disdain she didn't bother to hide. When Ethan talked about his travels, she stared at her phone. When he asked her a question, she answered like each word cost her something. It was awkward enough that even Ethan, usually oblivious to hostility, fell silent. After he left, the door barely clicked shut before Emma let out a sharp breath, like she'd been holding it the entire time. She turned to me with a look that was half disgust, half accusation. "Seriously, that's your best friend?" I froze, unsure how to even respond. She didn't wait for an answer. "He looks like he hasn't had a real job in years. He couldn't even dress properly to visit someone's home. And the way he talks, God, Alex, you couldn't tell. He's a mess." I tried to explain that Ethan had been living abroad, that he'd never cared about appearances, that he'd always been genuine, loyal, someone I trusted more than anyone. But Emma cut me off with a scoff. "You're too kind. You don't see people for what they are. He's dragging you down and you don't even notice." The more she spoke, the sharper her words became, like she'd been storing this bitterness long before today. She attacked Ethan's looks, his life choices, his personality, things she didn't even know. It wasn't concern. It wasn't advice. It was judgment. Cold, sweeping judgment. And then she said something that chilled me more than anything else. "If you keep someone like him in your life, don't expect me to stick around." That was the first moment I realized the way she saw people. Not by their heart, not by their loyalty, but by what she thought they were worth. And in her eyes, Ethan was worth nothing. The argument started the same way many of our arguments did, quietly, almost politely, like we were both pretending not to see the storm forming between us. But this time, there was no storm brewing. It was already here. It began the night after Ethan visited. Emma sat on the edge of the couch, legs crossed, arms folded tight, eyes sharp with a seriousness that made my stomach twist. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She spoke with the calmness of someone delivering a verdict. "Alex, I'm not going to tiptoe around this anymore. Your friend is toxic for you." I blinked, stunned. Toxic. Ethan. The guy who had flown back into the country just to reconnect, just to catch up, just to see me. I tried to reason with her, telling her that Ethan had been through a lot, that he was starting over, that he'd always been supportive, always loyal, always the one person I could rely on when everything else fell apart. But Emma didn't want to hear it. She leaned forward, her voice lowering, her irritation sharpening. You always defend him. You never listen when I tell you what's good for you. I felt something tighten in my chest. This wasn't about Ethan anymore. This was about control. Still, I kept my voice steady, trying to avoid things escalating. Emma, he's my friend. He's been with me through everything. You met him once. You don't know. She cut me off with a bitter laugh. Oh, I know enough. I know he's freeloading off people because he can't get his life together. I know he's using you because you're too soft to say no. And I know he will ruin everything we're building. I stared at her, shocked at how confidently she spoke about a man she'd known less than an hour. Then she stood up. The tension in the room thickened instantly. I'm giving you a choice. My heartbeat slowed. Not because I didn't expect what was coming, but because I did. Too clearly. She took a breath, and then the words dropped, heavy and cold. Either you cut him off completely, or I walk away. In that moment, everything froze. The air. My thoughts. Time itself. I searched her face for something, hesitation, doubt, anything, but she looked resolute, like she had rehearsed this ultimatum long before tonight. Emma, you can't ask me to abandon my best friend. I'm not asking, she replied. It's him or me. There it was. The line she wanted me to cross. The proof she needed to confirm whether she could bend my life into the shape she wanted. I felt a strange calm settle over me, not anger, not fear, just clarity. If you're making me choose, I said quietly, I'm choosing Ethan. Her lips trembled, not with sadness, but with disbelief. You're choosing him over your relationship, over me. I didn't look away. I'm choosing what's right. For a second, she seemed frozen. Then she grabbed her bag, her keys, slammed the door, and walked out without another word. And as the silence swallowed the apartment, I felt the weight of the moment settle in. I hadn't just ended a relationship. I had exposed it. And somewhere deep down, I sensed that this was only the beginning of everything that would unfold next. Ethan texted me 2 days after the breakup, telling me to meet him at a small coffee shop on the east side of town. I almost didn't go. My head was still spinning from everything that happened with Emma, from the silence in the apartment, from the weight of choosing a friend over a future I had once imagined. But when I walked in and saw Ethan sitting in the corner, hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee, I felt something inside me uncoil. He looked up, smiled gently, and said, "You look like you haven't slept in days." I sat down and didn't bother denying it. Ethan didn't push. He never did. After a moment, he took a deep breath, like he was preparing himself for something big. "Alex, I didn't tell you everything when I came back." My stomach tightened again, but this time from curiosity. Ethan reached into his bag and slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, contracts, valuation reports, acquisition statements. I recognized the Microsoft logo stamped across multiple pages. I looked up at him, speechless. He shrugged like it was nothing more exciting than a grocery receipt. "I sold my startup 2 months ago," he said quietly. 9 figures. I'm not supposed to talk publicly about it yet, but I wanted you to know. For a moment, the world around us faded. The clinking cups, the distant chatter, the hum of the espresso machine, everything disappeared. I kept staring at the papers, my brain refusing to process the number written there. Ethan continued, voice calm, almost apologetic. "I didn't dress up when I visited. I didn't flaunt anything. I didn't want anyone to treat me differently, least of all you." He paused, searching my expression. And I definitely didn't expect whatever happened with Emma. I closed the folder slowly, still stunned. "You built something worth this much." He chuckled. You say it like I didn't almost burn it to the ground twice. But yeah, we got lucky, and now I'm starting fresh. He leaned forward. That's actually why I called you here. I raised a brow, confused. Ethan reached into his bag again, pulling out a single-page proposal. Alex, I want you to join my new company. He let the words sink in before continuing. I want you as CTO, not as charity, not because we're friends, but because you're the only person I trust enough to build this with. My throat tightened. I glanced at the salary line, a number so high I had to blink twice, then at the equity portion, which looked even more surreal. Ethan, this could change everything. That's the point, he said softly. But then his expression shifted. More serious. More guarded. There's something else you need to see. He held out his phone. On the screen was a message notification. Emma's name. A long string of flirtatious texts. Compliments. Apologies. Attempts to reconnect. Attempts to get to know him better. Attempts to clear misunderstandings. My chest went cold. Ethan sighed. She messaged me the same night she left your apartment. I didn't reply, but you should know. I felt the betrayal hit in a slow, suffocating wave. Not because she reached out, but because the sweetness of her words was the exact opposite of the venom she spat when she thought Ethan was beneath her. Ethan watched me carefully. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't want to show you this unless you needed to see who she really was. And in that moment, sitting across from the friend she had mocked, insulted, and dismissed, I realized something with absolute clarity. Emma hadn't just judged Ethan. She had misjudged everything. And her choices were about to set off a chain of consequences she never saw coming. Ethan didn't respond to Emma right away. He just stared at the message for a long moment, tapping his thumb lightly against the table as if weighing something in his mind. Then he looked at me and said, I want to see what she's really after. I didn't argue. Deep down, I already knew. But hearing wasn't the same as watching it unfold. He messaged her back later that night, telling her he was free the next afternoon. She replied within seconds, adding a smiley face at the end of her text, something she rarely even sent to me. The next day, Ethan chose a quiet lounge bar, upscale enough to seem impressive, but private enough for what he had planned. When she walked in, she was dressed like she had somewhere important to be, hair perfectly curled, makeup flawless, wearing a perfume so strong you could sense it before she even reached the table. Ethan greeted her politely. She greeted him like they were old friends. Wow, she said, giving him a slow, exaggerated look. You clean up really well. He simply smiled and asked her to sit. Almost immediately, she leaned in, her voice softer, sweeter, almost unrecognizable compared to the sharp tone she used when talking about him before. I've been thinking a lot, she began. About you, about everything. Ethan nodded calmly, letting her speak. She placed her hand on the table, as if waiting for him to take it. He didn't. Undeterred, she kept going, her voice dripping with charm. You know I misjudged you. I shouldn't have, and I want to fix that. You seem different now, confident, successful. The irony nearly made Ethan laugh, but he kept his expression neutral. Then she shifted the conversation toward me. She sighed dramatically, shaking her head. Alex is complicated, she said. He doesn't appreciate people the way they deserve. He can be jealous, insecure. Honestly, you deserve a better friend. Hearing her twist reality so effortlessly would have hurt if I didn't already know who she was. Ethan just listened, letting her dig deeper. She began asking personal questions about his career, his finances, his plans. Not out of curiosity, out of calculation. Every time he gave a vague answer, she leaned closer, smiling as though she was trying to slip under his guard. You know, she murmured, tracing her finger along the rim of her glass. We'd make a really good team. You and I, we understand each other. We see potential in each other. It was almost surreal watching her rewrite herself in real time, creating a new version of Emma tailored specifically to what she believed Ethan wanted. What she didn't realize was that Ethan had placed his phone facing slightly upward. The microphone was recording. Every word, every manipulation, every lie. At one point, she even suggested that Ethan deserved someone more supportive than me, someone who could stand beside a successful man. Someone, presumably, like her. She said it with a confidence that made my skin crawl, a certainty that she could win him over simply by pretending hard enough. When the conversation finally ended, she gave him a slow smile and said, "Let's talk again soon. Maybe just the two of us, no distractions." She lightly touched his arm before walking away, clearly satisfied with herself. Ethan watched her leave, then glanced down at his phone, stopping the recording. He didn't celebrate. He didn't look victorious. He just looked tired. "Told you," he said quietly. "She didn't want you back. She wanted what she thought I had." And now we had proof, undeniable, unfiltered, and soon to become the final piece in a truth she could no longer escape. The night of Ethan's launch party felt electric from the moment we stepped onto the rooftop. Soft lighting reflected off the glass walls. Music pulsed low beneath the chatter of investors, engineers, and entrepreneurs who had flown in just for the event. It was the biggest night of Ethan's career, the official unveiling of the company he had dreamed about for years. I was supposed to feel nervous, but all I felt was anticipation. Ethan was in his element, shaking hands, answering questions, introducing people to one another with the ease of someone who finally stood where he belonged. No one here knew the version of him Emma had judged. They saw the truth, a brilliant founder with the kind of presence that drew people in. Halfway through the evening, I noticed movement near the entrance. Emma. She slipped inside as if she belonged there, wearing a dress that glittered under the lights and a smile that could fool a stranger. But not me. And definitely not Ethan. She looked around the rooftop until her eyes landed on Ethan. The moment she spotted him, her whole face lit up. She approached quickly, weaving through clusters of guests, confidence returning like a weapon. "Ethan," she said brightly, reaching out as if she were greeting an old flame. He politely stepped back, giving her only a nod. "Emma, I didn't know you'd be here." She twirled a strand of hair with a playful shrug. "I heard about the event. I wanted to support you." The lie slid off her tongue as smooth as honey. Ethan didn't reply. Instead, he glanced toward the stage. It was almost time. After a minute, one of the organizers handed him the microphone. The crowd quieted immediately. He stepped under the lights, looking every bit the confident founder the world was expecting. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "This company means more to me than I can say. And tonight, I want to introduce someone who has been a crucial part of building what comes next." My heart skipped. I didn't expect him to do this publicly. But he did. He smiled, turned toward me and said, "Our Chief Technology Officer, Alex." Applause erupted, loud and genuine. Emma's face drained of color. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time, and at the same time, losing something she thought she owned. But the night wasn't done with her. Not yet. Ethan continued, lowering his voice just enough for the room to lean closer. "And before we move forward, I think transparency is important, especially when it comes to the people we surround ourselves with." He lifted his phone and connected it to the speakers. A brief crackle. Then Emma's voice filled the entire rooftop. Her laughing. Her whispering. Her calling me insecure. Her suggesting she and Ethan should be together. Her badmouthing me, manipulating, flattering, hinting she deserved a place beside a successful man. The crowd went silent. Emma's eyes widened, her breath catching. She tried to move toward Ethan, but two staff members gently stepped in, blocking her. "This isn't who we are," Ethan said calmly to the audience. "This isn't the kind of energy we allow in this space." And just like that, Emma was escorted out. Her voice, once so sharp and sure of itself, cracked as she tried to explain. But no one listened. No one believed her. She reached for me as she passed, desperation replacing arrogance. "Alex, please." I didn't move. I didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. The door closed behind her, and the applause returned, louder, brighter, filled with a sense of justice settling into place. Ethan handed me a glass, clinked it gently against mine, and said with a quiet smile, "Onward." And for the first time in a long while, I felt exactly that, onward. What happened after the rooftop incident didn't unfold all at once. It unraveled slowly, like a thread being pulled from a sweater until the whole thing collapsed. Emma didn't disappear quietly. People like her never do. The morning after the event, she posted a long, emotional statement on social media. She painted herself as the victim, a woman betrayed by two insecure men, claiming that Ethan had manipulated the recording, that I had misunderstood her, that she had been set up by jealous people who couldn't handle her honesty. She used dramatic language, talking about heartbreak, gaslighting, emotional abuse. And for a moment, a small moment, some strangers believed her. But then the clip leaked. Not the edited version. The entire recording. Her own words, unfiltered, uncut, cruel in ways she couldn't deny. The laughing. The flirting. The lies. The way she talked about me, as if I were disposable. The way she tried to wrap herself around Ethan the second she thought he was wealthy. People online turned on her instantly. Comments shifted from sympathy to mockery. Screenshots spread. Memes appeared. Her Instagram followers dropped by the thousands. Emma tried to fight back. She wrote furious paragraphs claiming the audio was out of context. But the context was obvious. It was her tone, her intention, her eagerness. No amount of rewriting could change that. Then the consequences grew heavier. At her job, coworkers had seen the clip. Clients found it. Her boss called her in, and by the end of the week she was out, officially for unprofessional conduct, unofficially for embarrassing the company. Losing her job meant losing her apartment soon after. She tried to negotiate with her landlord, but the missed payments piled quickly. The building management finally sent her a notice to vacate. Desperate, she started showing up at my door. Not once. Not twice. Nearly every night for a week. She cried. She apologized. She begged. Then she screamed. Then she threatened. When that didn't work, she demanded money, claiming I owed her for the time she spent with me. I didn't argue. I forwarded everything to a lawyer. A formal cease and desist letter went out within 48 hours. After that, she stopped coming by. But she didn't stop spiraling. She tried starting a small online business, hopping to rebuild her image. No one bought anything. Her name was too tied to the scandal, too attached to the recording everyone had heard. Every attempt she made to reinvent herself crumbled because the truth kept following her, not because we spread it, but because she had crafted it with her own hands. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she moved back to her hometown, staying with a relative, still insisting she'd been wronged. Still clinging to the belief that her downfall was caused by us, not by her own reflection. And in a strange way, I felt something like closure. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Just clarity. Some people ruin themselves by accident. Others do it step by step, choice by choice, convinced the world will never catch up to them. Emma belonged to the second group. Her masks had fallen off one by one, until nothing was left but the truth she had tried so hard to hide. In the quiet that followed everything, life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became honest. I stopped replaying the past and started paying attention to the small, steady pieces of my present. The piece that came wasn't dramatic. It arrived slowly, like a room growing brighter as someone pulls back the curtains. Ethan and I didn't try to rebuild what was broken. We simply let it fade, grateful for the part we played in revealing the truth, but ready to move on separately. There was no bitterness left between us, just an unspoken understanding that some chapters close for good reason. As for Emma, she became a distant story, no longer a shadow that hovered over my days. I didn't wish her harm. I just wished for distance, and with time I got it. What remained was a steady sense of strength I hadn't noticed forming. A quiet reminder that people can betray you, disappoint you, underestimate you, but they can't define you. In the end, the chaos passed, the wounds healed, and I learned to trust myself again. Not because everything turned out perfectly, but because I finally understood that survival is its own kind of victory.